Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Radhe, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Radhe, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Gopala, Radhe Gopala, Radhe Gopala. Radhe Radhe, Radhe Gopala, Radhe Radhe, Radhe Gopala. Nitai God Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai God Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai God Hari Bol. Quite a team, you two. Do you sing together every day? Every day. Every day. Yes. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This evening we're going to continue with Canto 10, Chapter 13, verse number 3. 10:13:3. And the speaker is Shukadev Goswami. And in the first two verses, he's expressed his great appreciation for the qualification of Maharaj Parikshit to tirelessly hear, literally day and night for 7 days. Of course, it's not been 7 days yet. Something like 5 days, because we're in Canto 10, Chapter 13. Hearing topics about Krishna. Because in the previous chapter, Maharaj Parikshit said a few things. At the conclusion of the chapter, Maharaj Parikshit said, wait a minute, how come the cowherd boys describe the killing of Aghasura 1 year later, but saying that it would happen that very day? And it can't be, please explain. Then he speculates, it can't be that they're in illusion, because these are cowherd boys, they're pure devotees. It must be the influence of Yogamaya. No, it's deductive, but he wants to hear confidential topics about Krishna from the qualified speaker, Shukadev. And this chapter begins, oh, Maharaj Parikshit, you are so enthusiastic to hear topics about Krishna. And these are very confidential topics. And most people aren't able to understand them. But I'll explain it to you because you're so enthusiastic. And that's where we are beginning. Before I begin, there's two key words, attention, avahita. Avahita means with great attention. Kindly hear me with great attention. Shrinusva, please hear with great attention. And then another term that's used here is attention. Attention and intention, intention. Intention. So it's one of those things about chanting japa or kirtan. If your intention is very clear and focused, your attention will be very clear and focused. Negatively, if your intention is not so clear and focused, it's really hard to have focused attention. The mind will wander. So intention precedes attention. So being attentive when hearing permits one to understand things that otherwise one cannot. That's what we're understanding here. Oh. Scam, likely. Okay. Oh, King! Kindly hear me with great attention. Shrunusva avahita. Although the activities of the Supreme Lord are very confidential, no ordinary man being able to understand them, I shall speak about them to you. For spiritual masters explain to a very submissive disciple even subject matters that are very confidential and difficult to understand. That's a nice introduction. There's no BBT commentary for this verse, but here's Jiva Goswami's commentary. Be attentive, since what I will speak is very difficult to understand. It's similar to how Krishna begins chapter 7 of Bhagavad Gita, Tatrinu. Maya sakta manarpata yogam yunjanmadashraya asamsayam samagramam yatagyasyasi Tatrinu. Tatrinu. Because it's very confidential. The knowledge of knowing the absolute truth in full without doubt. That's what he's declaring to Arjuna. I'm going to explain the whole shebang, everything there is to be known, completely without a doubt. You have to listen very attentively to capture everything. So be attentive, since what I will speak is very difficult to understand. Oh, person shining with intelligence, Rajan. Rajan generally means king, but it also means shining, the shining one. Rajan. The word at the very end of the verse, the word uta is there, which indicates Shukadev's intention. I will speak about this. Many astonishing things which appear impossible concerning the Lord and Brahma will be told, which are not easily understood by all. In this way, the topic is secret Guyam, very confidential, Raja Vijay Raja Guyam, confidential knowledge. And this section, chapter 13, has so much commentary, it'll just overwhelm you, because things are disclosed that are not easy to understand, and so there's a lot of commentary because it's not easy to understand. So the Acharyas are helping us understand. Reference to this verse is found in the previous chapter, chapter 12. This is chapter 13. Here's the verse from chapter 12. Shukadeva Goswami continued, O king, one day Krishna decided to take his breakfast as a picnic in the forest. So chapter 12 is the killing of Aghasura demon. And at the beginning of the day, actually the previous day, Krishna said, hey, guess what? We're going to have a picnic tomorrow. So have your parents, instead of having breakfast before we go out with the calves, don't have breakfast. I'll wake you up and we'll have breakfast out with the calves. It was a break from the pattern of their activities. So reference is being made here to that verse at the beginning of chapter 12, the very first verse of chapter 12. Having risen early in the morning, Krishna blew his horn and woke all the cowherd boys and calves with its beautiful sound. Then Krishna and the boys, keeping their respective groups of calves before them, proceeded from Vraja to the forest. Commentary. May the astonishing Lord who shines because of astonishing form, qualities, and activities, may he be merciful to me. In 3 chapters, so that's commentary at the beginning of chapter 12. In 3 chapters, Shukadeva describes further pastimes of the Kumara age. So Kumar age means it's Krishna still in this childhood. He's still, at this time, he's just 5 years old with the calves, not with the cows. First, he describes the killing of Agasura. That's chapter 12. Then, in case you're interested, it appears from Jiva Goswami's commentary that during his time, there were some scholars that didn't like the fact that some demons are said to have achieved Sarupya liberation. Sarupya, they achieved forms like the Lord. They didn't like it. And so they came up with this idea that it's interpolated. Interpolated means later on some fudging went on, as in people just stuck in some extra chapters in the Bhagavatam that don't belong there. Some people say. So he's going to address those some people that say that. I do not see why some people do not accept chapters 12 through 14, so Agasura and then the Brahma Vimohan Lila, and the statements concerning Putana. There are some statements concerning Putana in chapter 6 that she achieves the position of mother, assistant of Mother Jasoda. They don't like it, so they object. Where it is stated that Putana was liberated, since the stories are available in all places, various Puranas describe the same pastimes, and there are explanations of them in ancient and modern commentaries, such as, gives lists of names, 5 names I've never heard before, but people apparently made commentaries on these pastimes. If the chapters are not authoritative, based on proofs in one's own sampradaya, the opposite conclusion can be reached by proofs from other sampradayas which accept it. So that's not a compelling argument. Some will argue that names such as Aghabit, like Murabit, are not seen in the Bhagavatam, and therefore the story of Agasura is interpolated. This is not an acceptable argument, for it is said in 3rd Canto, chapter 15, the word Aghabit is found. Yan na rajanti aghabido rachanavudvaditach. Those who hear topics other than the glorification of. So Aghabit can make reference to Agasura, or Aghabido or Aghabida refers to destroying of sin. And that's how Prabhupada has translated it in Canto 3, chapter 15. Aghabida, the vanquisher of all kinds of sins. He's doing what scholars are called upon to do sometimes. You know, the naysayer people have some objection, and they say, this can't be because. So the scholars have to take the time and trouble, and he does, of saying, well, that's not a valid argument because. So the verse, this is Canto 3, chapter 15. Those who hear the topics other than the glorification of Aghabit, unworthy topics which destroy intelligence, cannot enter Vaikuntha. So he says it's already mentioned elsewhere in the Bhagavatam. Nor can one say that the pastime, Agasura pastime, does not occur in lists of the pastimes in the Bhagavatam, since Sridhar Swami in various places refers to this pastime. Then another argument, to say that there are 332 chapters instead of 335 chapters, with omission of the 3 chapters in the middle, is not acceptable to Sridhar Swami, nor should anything be omitted anywhere else. So he refers to Sridhar Swami's commentary. You all know who is Sridhar Swami, right? Anyone need explanation? Do you know who is Sridhar Swami? No? Lord Chaitanya accepted the commentary of Sridhar Swami. Sridhar Swami was a Vaishnava, Acharya, but somehow historically he received sannyas initiation, as did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the Shankara Sampradaya. But he was a Vaishnava. And he knew, Sridhar Swami knew, that Shankaracharya composed 8 verses, an Ashtaka, that glorifies Krishna in a manner that he was making reference to Srimad Bhagavatam, because their pastimes in those 8 prayers, they're only spoken of in the Bhagavatam. So it's prayers to Krishna from the Bhagavatam, or with reference to the Bhagavatam. So followers of Shankaracharya knew that Shankaracharya had some appreciation, some affection for Srimad Bhagavatam. That Jiva Goswami explains all this in his commentary, his Tattva Sandarbha, where he says there was actually one of the Shankaracharya followers. Shankar didn't touch it. One of his followers did and made an impersonal commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. Fortunately, it was lost. And then following him came Sridhar Swami, who thought, I want to make a commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam because the Shankara followers have some affinity for the Bhagavatam, because Shankara did, I'll include some portions that won't turn them off, because if it's entirely devotional, they'll reject it. So there are some portions in Sridhar Swami's commentary that are deliberately impersonal. But by and large, 95% of it is spiritual or Vaishnava-like. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted his commentary. So when Jiva Goswami wrote commentaries making reference to Sridhar Swami, he did so for 2 reasons. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted him as the foremost acharya, foremost commentator on Srimad Bhagavatam. That is to say, chronological later commentaries must make reference to his. So Jiva Goswami, when he makes reference to him as one of his principal sources, he explicitly says, I make reference only where it is in line with Vaishnava teachings. He doesn't get into a big, long explanation about his strategy to try to attract Shankara followers to the Bhagavatam by giving some non-devotional interpretations of verses. Because there are sections of the Bhagavatam that one can look through that lens and go, yeah, impersonal feature. So, here Jiva Goswami, this is in his Srimad Bhagavatam commentary, is saying Sridhar Swami in his commentaries gives some number. It's 335 chapters, where the 3 chapters are not omitted, and they're included. So there's this Sanskrit is here. Because he has commented on all the chapters, 335, including these three, and all the verses of those three, in the phrase Dva Tri Mashat Trishatam, the meaning is actually 32 plus 3 and 300. Then he goes on with some other Sanskrit logic. Nor should the chapters be rejected because they describe that demons attain liberation, since there are many examples where Krishna gives liberation to those he kills. He makes reference to Bhagavad Gita, chapter 16, text 20, where Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, taking birth as demons, birth after birth, these fools, not me, go to the lowest, must mean not contacting me, must go to the lowest status of life, O son of Kunti. The verse says that those who do not attain Krishna enter into hell, whereas those who do contact him get liberation. Yeah, it's contacting him. Then he refers to a nice verse. This is an important verse from the Canto 2, Chapter 7. Those of you a little familiar with the list of incarnations that are found in Canto 1, Chapter 3, there's a similar list in Canto 2, Chapter 7. And in that list, there's an expanded description of Krishna avatar. And one of those verses, 2, 7, 34 through 35, important verse, quote, there's no one there. The demons, this verse is going to say demons got liberation. The demons headed by Pralamba, Dhenuka, Bakakeshi, Arishta, the wrestlers, Kuvalyapida, Kamsa, Kalyavana, Dvidvida, Pondraka, Shalva, Narakasura, Balvala, Dantavakra, the seven bulls, Shambhara, Vidurata, and Rukmi, as well as those with bow in hand, glorious in fighting on the battlefield, in other words, all who died in the Kurukshetra battle, such as the Kambojas, Matsyas, Kurus, Srinjayas, and will attain Sayuja or Vaikuntha by the Lord, or through his instruments, Balaram, Arjun, Bhima, and others. So it's a very explicit list. Demons achieve liberation. So don't say you have to reject those three chapters because you don't like the idea that demons achieve liberation. They achieve liberation. Killed by Krishna. One cannot say, quote, these pastimes did not take place since they are not mentioned in other Puranas. Well, these pastimes are clearly mentioned in Pradma Purana, Brahmanda Purana, and many others. Furthermore, places of these pastimes are well known in Vrindavan. It is also not a contradiction if the demons attain a destination similar to that of the devotees, since pure devotees do not value the liberation that the demons achieve at all. There are hundreds of statements like the following. Again from Canto 3, Chapter 15. Persons who have realized you do not regard attainment of impersonal liberation as your mercy. What to speak of attaining a material position like Indra, which is subject to fear caused by the Lord raising his eyebrows? Nor did Putana become a mother equal to Yashoda. This idea is rejected by those who understand the glorification of Yashoda. He gives one reference from chapter 14. This is the following chapter, Brahma's prayers. Shad Veshad Iva Putanapi Sakula Tvam Eva Devapita. You have already arranged to give yourself to Putana and her family members in exchange for her disguising herself as a devotee. Brahma prayed. Putana is glorified only for assuming the dress of a mother to attain the Lord. This produces greater glorification of Yashoda. She is glorified for attaining the position of a mother because she dressed like a mother. One more paragraph and then he moves on. The problem is not resolved by saying that there were two souls in Putana. Apparently some people were saying. According to the saying, Tat Sansargi Cha Panchamaha. She had fault. Now I won't go into it, but it's a Nyaya rule. Without going into it. She had a fault. Thus there is no contradiction. Rather, it produces the highest glorification of the devotees and their bhakti. This can be realized by the special mercy of the Lord. Thus, Shukadev says, the topics are confidential. That's this verse. So those who are devotees and really attentive and listening can understand mysteries about Krishna that otherwise remain mysteries. Then he goes on, enough of this. Let us return to the topic. He's going to give now a little summary of the Lila. Krishna, this is going back now to chapter 12. Krishna had a strong desire to picnic in the forest. The previous day, he informed his friends that they would have breakfast prepared at home and they would carry the meal to the forest. This was the first time he desired to do this, and there was a reason. Previously, it was mentioned that he took breakfast and then went to the forest. In this verse, he says, one day he desired to eat in the forest. After taking off his night clothing, washing his face, and dressing in attractive clothing, he quickly rose to his feet, left the house, and woke up the other boys. And how did he do that? He blew on his conch shell, his horn. With a desire to have fun with the other boys, he slowly left Braja. These herders of calves were his friends. He woke them up with joy by the pleasing charuna sound of his horn. The pleasing nature of the horn was its very swarup. He put the calves in front. He is called Hari because he was attractive to all the boys. He left Braja in a special condition, nirgataha, that is, without Balaram. Though Balaram desired to go, upon hearing the sound of the horn, and he had heard of the plans from Krishna, his mother made him perform ceremonies for safety at home on the instructions of astrologers. That was the main reason for him not being present there. Of course, there's another reason. He had a Lila to perform that he didn't want Balaram to participate in. We'll hear as the chapter unfolds. The influence of the Lila Shakti to produce Balaram's absence in the past time was secondary, since Krishna's main reason for going was the picnic, whereas the killing of Aghasura and Brahma's bewilderment was incidental. So what does that mean? Um, this is the theme that's repeated. That's the sweetness of Krishna's pastimes are what's special about Braja Lila. And the sweetness means his very loving exchanges with the residents of Vrindavan. He loved the cows, and the cows loved him. He loved the cowherd boys, and the cowherd boys loved him. And he was more interested in being with the cowherd boys, having lunch with the cowherd boys, than in killing Aghasura or even having the Brahma Vimohan Lila. Now, Brahma's a very dear devotee, but he's not a cowherd boy. So, like at the end of chapter 14, when all of the prayers are recited, what was Krishna's response? Nothing. He didn't say anything, and he was silent. And the explanation is he wanted to get back to having lunch with the cowherd boys, because it's not, that's his sweetness, and he's enjoying their company, and they're enjoying his company. So he did this other pastime for many reasons, for Brahma's reason, for killing Aghasura's reason, for giving affection to the mothers and to the cows when he took forms like the cowherd boys and the cows. Forms of calves. So the mothers could have Krishna as their calf, give milk directly to Krishna. Directly. That was their desire. Krishna fulfilled their desire. So his statement here is that Balaram was absent in part because of Lila Shakti. Now he uses this word Lila Shakti like we commonly use Yogamaya. The terms mean almost the same thing. Lila Shakti, Yogamaya. The potency that Krishna engages or deploys to assist him in his pastime. So it was a pastime for Balaram to not be there. He writes, each word, each sentence, each verse, and each topic in this pastime, from beginning to end, is filled with more wonder than anything previous. The pastime can be understood only by those with devotion. For fear of lengthening the discussion, nothing more will be said. And there's only a very short commentary added in Krama Sandarbha. Krama Sandarbha is the verse by verse commentary on the entire Srimad Bhagavatam by Jiva Goswami. And it's just 2 short lines. O King, hear from me with great attention, since I will speak confidential topics to you. Gurus speak secrets to an affectionate disciple. I will also do this. And he ends, Utta means, I conclude in this way. So that's his intention. His intention is disclosure and to catch what he's intending to disclose, confidential things. It requires attention on the part of the hearer. Maharaj Parikshit has that quality. He's very eager to hear. There are several verses in a row. Actually, we spent 4 days just hearing commentary on the importance of hearing with attention. And when one does, it's newer and newer experience. But if one doesn't have that eagerness to hear, it's not newer and newer. It's like, I heard that already. What else is, can you go on to something else? Kind of like sometimes happens for devotees, like, I've heard that already. What's some new nectar? When There are two passages in Srimad Bhagavatam that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it says in Chaitanya Bhagavat, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard 100 times more from Gadadhar Pandit. The story of Dhruva Maharaj and the story of Prahlad Maharaj. And it's not like he didn't know it, but the eagerness to hear again and again is the way of um, relishing the topics of Srimad Bhagavatam, to hear again and hear again. It's not the same, but it's something like kirtan, since you too like kirtan. Something like kirtan, when the melody is that whatever the melody is, and it's not just, I know that melody, what's another melody? But when you're absorbed in kirtan, then the melody and this just the sound of the holy name, it's a new experience each time you sing the same melody. When you're absorbed, when you're not absorbed, that's not the same experience. But same with Hari Katha or Krishna Katha, Krishna Lila. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu certainly knew the story of Prahlad. We know the story of Prahlad, but you hear it again and hear it again and hear it again. It's compared to, you probably heard this metaphor, it's compared to making sandalwood paste. Have you made sandalwood paste before? No? 3 things. Piece of wood maybe the size of your fist, a flat stone, and a little bit of water in this circular motion. And Mahamantra, or prayers, or some Krishna meditation as you're doing. And what happens is the wood becomes paste. And not only it becomes paste, but it becomes very fragrant. You can smell the fragrance just from the making of the sandalwood paste. And the whole room fills with the fragrance. And it has a very cooling effect. Similarly, hearing the topics of Srimad Bhagavatam again and again is like making sandalwood paste. Very fragrant, very aromatic, very cooling and soothing. And it's best in the company of others. Of course, you can just sit in a room by yourself and read or recite. But it's even, the appreciation grows, like with kirtan, when there are others participating in the kirtan. Sankirtan makes it even nicer. It's certainly nicer to sit and sing or chant or read, but it's even nicer in the company of like-minded persons. So the Bhagavatam is like that, and these preliminary verses are going to launch into something very confidential. Touch, renew, hear from me. Listen with great attention. The pastime, there's so much in Krishna's pastimes that's filled with mystery. And even it's so mysterious that we don't catch it unless it's pointed out. See this mystery and see that mystery. Now sometimes, by listening carefully, we'll hey, this seems to contradict that. So how do you explain this and that? Because they seem contradictory. But there's even far more profound and mysterious parts of Krishna's pastimes that are revealed through our acharyas, because they're certainly careful listeners, and they've heard from those who are careful listeners, and they explain. And I've been doing this for maybe 3 months now, just what we, reading and then commentaries, and then churning the topics. It's really amazing. It's quite profound. The experience, on the experience level, not just the information level, but the experience level is quite profound. The attraction for Krishna grows just by hearing Krishna Katha, especially from the mouths of realized souls, their appreciation is contagious. One becomes spiritually infected. By the way, that the rapid test worked. We're going to be visiting Boston. So Boston has a policy. The state of Massachusetts has a policy. You're subject to a $500 fine if you don't register with the state that you're coming from a state that's flagged, other than like half a dozen other states or so that are not flagged as dangerous, and you have a COVID-19 test, and it's negative. And if they found out you broke the rule, you're subject, if they catch you, subject to a $500 fine. So compliments of Raghuvanandan and his member, we were able to do that today. I'm negative. COVID negative. And we'll continue doing the same. The plan is, while there, to start the Damodara Lila, and then after doing that for close to a month, return here and we'll cover the Putana Lila, chapter 6. It's really a far out chapter. Lots and lots of mysteries found within that chapter. Damodara Lila too. But the idea is not just to be Sherlock Holmes or read a detective story for a school. Do you have to read school books like that in school? Detective stories. Much better. I mean, the mystery is profound, and the solution to the mystery is profound, and the attraction for Krishna is the real goal. Okay, so let's see if there's some discussion. Our host or hostess, if you would like to go first, you're invited. If not, we'll take whoever's got their hand up. Okay. In the back? Yeah.
In the Brahma Vimohan Lila, why didn't Krishna try to get the coward boys back?
Why did he not?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he did.
Oh, okay.
The unfolding of the pastime goes like this. They sat down for lunch. The calves started to wander here and there. The cowherd boys noticed, oh, the calves have started to wander here and there, getting fresh grasses. Krishna said, no worries. You stay here and finish lunch. I'll gather up the calves. So when Krishna went to gather up the calves, the Brahma had kidnapped the calves and put them in a cave. And he went looking for the calves. He couldn't find the calves. He came back and the cowherd boys were gone. So he looked for the cowherd boys. Now, it's his own, he's omniscient, but it's his own Yogamaya potency where he became ecstatic, or, an ecstasy of bewilderment. Where'd they go? His omniscience was overwhelmed because of his affection for the cowherd boys, and they were missing. And then he knew, in the next moment he knew, and so he manifested identical forms of calves and cowherd boys. So he did go look for them.
Thank you, Marge.
But there was another purpose. You know what happened. That as this chapter unfolds, um, for 1 year, for 1 year, Krishna manifested himself as calves and cowherd boys, so that the mothers of the cowherd boys would have Krishna as their son. They didn't know it. They thought it was their son, but they were amazed that their affection for their son became equal to the affection that they had for Krishna, which was even greater than the affection for their son. They were amazed. But they didn't put two and two together and come up with four. They didn't think, oh, this must be Krishna appearing like my son. Because the affection for Krishna is very special, even more than the affection for one's son. Behind you?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. About the attentive hearing and chanting to bring the attention. So what happens is, even if I set the intention while chanting, I'm finding it difficult to get the attention. One thing that I observe is in day-to-day activities, some of the activities which are not directly related to devotional service, but which aligns with somehow with my personality or something skills that Krishna has given, that in those activities I'm able to bring a lot of my attention because probably it's my field of interest. And so in my chanting too, I try to um, I'm having the expectation that I will be able to have that same attention and absorption, but that doesn't seem to happen in my hearing and chanting, Maharaj. So how can I, how do I understand and work
Why and
on
what
that?
to do? Well, I'll take the spotlight off of your question for a moment and turn to our two kirtaniers over here. It's very common for young devotees to like kirtan and not have the same liking for japa. And why? Well, certainly with kirtan, there's the holy name, and in various ways of aside from the Hare Krishna mantra, the other mantras that you were singing. And there are features to kirtan that's not just the holy name. It's the proficiency of the instrument, or musicality. Music is a universal language of all cultures. People like music. So there's something, there's the social dynamic, there, et cetera, et cetera. There's many elements of kirtan that make it easier to get absorbed in, that it's not specifically the name, it's the musicality and the it's etc. So when it comes to just chanting japa, the same, enlivenment and enthusiasm is not there. So why? Because there's a psychophysical nature that connects with kirtan, or some of the things that you do, that we all do, that is stimulating and matches our nature, and it's easy to get absorbed in them. But the absorption is not specifically that it's being done for Krishna. And you can take so many other examples. Some people like cooking, and it's really easy for them to spend, plan and get in there and really make some nice preparations and enjoy the activity and enjoy seeing the the members that come to their home or the temple or whatever the public that they really like the prasadam, and it's but then put their hand in their bead bag and it's not the same. So that which matches our, that's the why, it matches our psychophysical nature, and therefore it's a nice fit and one can get absorbed. But the same is not in the spiritual nature, different than psychophysical nature, and that is our relationship with Krishna. It isn't developed, or it's covered by modes and conditioning and stuff. So what to do is you do those things that match your nature with enthusiasm and try to direct those things towards pleasing Krishna. So like 7.1 Bhagavad Gita, Maya Saktamanak Partha. Asakti, we're attached to something. And so the bhakti process is to redirect that attachment to something to attachment to Krishna. Mayi asakta manak. And so how do you do that? By the bhakti process. Yogam yunjan. By practice of yoga, linking with Krishna. Madashraya, by taking shelter of Krishna, those who have taken shelter of Krishna. Just to unpack that first verse. And that's the bhakti process. And that's why Prabhupada spoke from that verse or on that verse so many times, more than any other verse, any other Bhagavad Gita verse. It's packed. And then it's easy to unpack it. So then comes the application. So it's not like you don't know what to do. You know what to do. It's just the coverings are there, and the coverings win. And the bhakti isn't sufficiently matured yet. So you continue practicing with emphasis on the bhakti principle. Your question is similar to the same question that was asked 3 times yesterday evening and then again this morning. It's a common question. It's expressed slightly differently, but it's the unsteady bhakti platform, and how do you get steady? And archana vritti, by doing bhajana kriya exactly like this evening's verse, attentively. Well, I'm distracted. That's the problem. I try, but I'm distracted. That's unsteady bhakti, and sometimes more, and sometimes less. Distracted.
Maharaj, is it okay to have that expectation that I'll get similar kind of absorption in chanting?
It's not exactly. It's expectation. Just use a different word and say objective or aspiration, yearning. Yearning is a good word. Asha bandha, hope against hope. Expectation has some kind of connotation like entitlement. I put in, I should get back. Yearning. Then it puts more emphasis on the descending mercy than it is, I deserve it. That's an expectation. Okay?
Yes, thank you.
Anything? No?
Okay. In this Brahma Vimohan Lila pastime, 1 year Krishna Krishna's association with his cowherd boyfriends was interrupted by Brahma. Yet, at the end of the pastime, we see that Krishna was very forgiving to Brahma, and there was no punishment, or even he was not even angry at.
No words.
Yeah.
Nothing. I mean, silent was a kind of a punishment, I think.
So, does it indicate the?
It indicates that Krishna understood. Different than with Indra, who was proud. Brahma was not proud. Brahma was curious. He wanted to understand the limit of Krishna's mystic powers, and the conclusion was there's no. Krishna understood Brahma's curiosity. He fulfilled it in a pretty spectacular way, beyond a shadow of doubt, unlimited.
Thank you, Maharaj.
His intention wasn't challenging. It wasn't good. He stole the calves and cowherd boy. He interrupted Krishna's path. He wanted to get back and finish lunch. But he also wanted to do some other things. Reciprocate with Brahma. It says that in the chapter summary at the beginning. Okay.
Krishna Maharaj. Here in this verse, it says that the spiritual, the activities of the Supreme Lord are very confidential and no ordinary man being able to understand them. But still I shall speak to you as for spiritual masters explain to the submissive disciple even subject matters that are very confidential and difficult to understand. So my question is, how do I know if I am really hearing with full submission?
Well, you've answered your question 2 evenings in a row that says you don't. So you already know that you don't. So why are you asking? But if the answer, and when you do reach that position, you'll know, because you'll feel satisfied. You know the verse. Bhakti parishanubhavo viraktir anyatra cha. It's an often quoted verse where the satisfaction from bhakti, satisfaction from hearing, is compared to a person who's been fasting. So we've all had that experience. And after fasting, when you break the fast, 3 things happen. The limbs of the body again feel some strength. The hunger subsides. And the final thing is, you've had enough. So you don't need someone to tell you you've had enough. You can tell them. It's a subjective experience. As with the eating after fasting process, so also the bhakti process. Viraktiranyatra cha. There's a real clear one. Detachment from other things. Virakti, detachment. Anyatra. Whatever it is. No thanks. And if there's distraction, then you haven't heard. Para Isha Anubhav, feelings of affection for Para Isha and wanting to do some service, to be in his service. Those are 3 things. That's the litmus test. All right? Any of you three in the front row up here want to discuss something? Do you want to know how to develop an attraction for japa like you have for playing mridanga? It starts with a desire. That's how it all begins. If say it negatively, if that desire isn't there, it won't happen. It's not going to fall from the sky. Because when you're having kirtan, now I don't know if when you're playing the drum and your sister's singing, are you also singing in response? Okay, so you're hearing and you're gauging the ear and you're gauging the tongue. So practice during two things. Practice during kirtan. Here's the deity, and you're singing the names of the deity. So when you're singing the names of the deity and Krishna's name, it's for their pleasure. It takes the focus off, how well you're playing mridanga and how well you're complementing your sister's singing to the musicality part, the proficiency of the music part. But it's for the pleasure of Krishna, not just a sense of accomplishment. Like in school, you want to do well in school. So it's one thing just to want to do well in school. It's another thing to want to, because where's the ability to do well in school come from? Where does everything come from? From the source of everything. That's where everything comes from. So bhakti means to connect with the source of everything. So when you're doing two things, when you're doing kirtan, practice consciously. This is for the pleasure of it'll take you to a better level of proficiency in playing mridanga than if you're just focusing on the proficiency of playing mridanga. You follow? Krishna will see, he really wants, then something will happen. There's a relationship where not just the ability to play proficiency becomes stronger, but a feeling of connection. And that's just the music part. And then there's the name part. When you're hearing your sister's voice and when you're responding with your voice, it's calling the name of your deity, calling the name of Krishna, and the name is not different than the person. It's bhakti. It's connect with a personal relationship. That's bhakti. And that makes the difference between chanting where you like chanting and you're chanting because, you mean japa now, chanting because, I don't know, because we hear we're supposed to do it, I guess that's why I do it. But if it's for another purpose, like a relationship purpose, you spend time with people because you have some feeling of affection for those people. You develop some affection or attachment for them. You like being with certain people because you like being with those people. So you invest in those relationships. You look forward to being. I'll say a third thing. And the third thing is really simple. Somebody wrote to me some time ago, I really enjoy hearing my 16 rounds. Because when you're hearing, not just making a sound with your mouth, but when you're hearing the sound, according to our acharyas, without giving more details, the mind becomes captured. When the mind becomes captured, you feel something. At the heart level, you'll feel something. So look forward to hearing your japa, not just chanting, but there's power in eagerness to hear, which was exactly what our verse was. And the last three verses of this, the first three verses of this chapter, Bhagavatam. Hearing, not just chanting, but hearing. You do the chanting part with your mouth so that you can hear. I shared that with, you know who Badahari is, right? He's a celebrated kirtanier in ISKCON. I shared that with him one day. We were attending a japa retreat. And I said to him, I got this really nice letter. Someone was writing to me, I'm really enjoying hearing my 16 rounds every day. And he went, ooh. And then he made a comment, a funny comment. He said, when I'm sitting with people that are chanting, I'm wondering, are they at all hearing what they're saying? Because what comes out is not the mantra. It's something else. If you're hearing, you're feeling something. If you're not hearing, it's mechanical. And that's not attractive. So if you want to have an attraction for japa like you have for music, try hearing the sound of the mantra. Try entering into a relationship with Krishna, and when you're having kirtan, sing for the pleasure of the deities. Those three things. That will help you. The same for you. And for me too. Anything else? Do we have something online? One question.
This question is from Giridhar Prabhu. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Are demons like Agasura, Bakasura present in Goloka Vrindavan pastimes?
Are they present in Goloka?
Goloka Vrindavana
Yeah,
pastimes.
there's in Goloka Vrindavan, in Krishna Loka, there's no demons. So the answer is no. The position they achieved after being Agasura and Bakasura was Vaikuntha, four-arm form in Vaikuntha. That's from our acharyas. Okay, we're done. Prabhupada ki jai.